Welcome to another episode of Indaba, the African Debate. My name is Mdudi Zubran, and as always, thank you ever so much for joining me today. Our guest today is from the Kingdom of Eswatini. Our guest will be able to shed light on what is happening in the kingdom at the present moment. At the time of recording, internet access in Eswatini is heavily restricted. Therefore, we'll not be able to get a video feed of our guest. We might have one or two interruptions, but please do bear with us. And I hope you do understand that due to the restricted internet access, we might have one or two issues with communications as the episode goes on. Nonetheless, I hope that we will be able to learn quite a lot on what is happening right now in the kingdom. Let's dive in.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. My name is Maxwell Dlamini. I'm a youth democracy activist from the Kingdom of Eswatini, which is Africa's last absolute monarchy. I'm an activist that have spent about 4 of the past 10 years in prison, having been charged with sedition, terrorism, for demanding for democratic reforms in the Kingdom of Eswatini. So yes, I am the person that has been working on the ground with other activists, youth, as well as the pro-democracy movement.
Thank you ever so much, Maxwell, for that. I think as much as we've all seen what's going on, we've all heard what's going on, we have an idea of some sort of what's going on in Eswatini. One thing that we don't seem to understand from a distance is how did this all come about? How did Eswatini get to this point that she finds herself in today?
Well, thanks, my brother. I think the anger and the frustration have been brewing for quite some time because you know that since independence in 1968, there was a constitution and Swaziland a multi-party democracy where they were able to elect their own government. But in 1973, the past king, which is the II, decided, to ban political parties and to outlaw political parties, and then took all powers unto himself as an absolute monarch. He then appointed the cabinet, the prime minister, and some members of the members of parliament. So there have been a struggle that have been ongoing in Swaziland since 1973 for people, for their self-determination to elect their government. And I think Swaziland, being a small country, has not been able to gain the traction that maybe it is gaining as of now. But to come to why do we arrive where we are right now, I've indicated that the tension, it has been brewing for a longest time. And it has also been perpetrated by the socio-economic conditions of young people. They don't have lack of scholarships, they're lacking the basic health needs, they lack jobs, they lack, all those employment opportunities. And poverty is quite very much high, as well as drug and alcohol abuse in the Kingdom of Eswatini. So all those frustrations have been burning, within these young people. But what then take at everything is then, in May, the police, they killed the university student named Kutabani Konyan, and then they hide his body as well as his cars. And to make matters worse, they kept on telling the family that, no, they don't know this boy, they are running a missing person, adverts, everything, And then subsequently it came about that he's actually been killed. They've already been knowing where they've kept his body, which has been hidden in the forest, as well as his car that was hidden in the Matapa police station. So that's what then sparked the protest, of young people led by the student in the university demanding justice, for that killed university student. And also they're demanding an end to police brutality. So then it's escalated into a series of protests. And then from there, it then escalated into a demand for an election of a democratic government. And these young people, were peacefully delivering protests or petitions in the different constituencies in the country. There are 59 where we elect, those members of parliament that are elected by the people. So these young people were delivering, these petitions into these MPs to take to parliament. So one of the common features there was the issue of a democratic government or to elect a prime minister, the issue of scholarship, the issue of jobs, the issue of health system, as well as an issue of the end to police brutality. So then a week ago, 2 weeks ago, the prime minister then banned the delivery, of these petitions, saying that they've been hijacked and then there's anarchy. And then the National Commission then came and said, no, we are declaring war against, these petitioners or these protesters that have been peacefully delivering, these petitions. So then the young people, as well as the pro-democracy movement, and then they started, defying, that element of that have been issued, by the national commissioner. And then they started protesting at night, and then the police are clamping down, violently shooting people,
Yeah.
and then it's escalated into the chaos that you are seeing now. The burning of shops, the looting, nearly all the major towns in Swaziland has been shut down, gutted down with fire. There is a shortage of food supplies currently. There's no fuel currently in the country because the most of the supermarkets and the big shops have been looted, have been burned down. And then the state, they unleashed the army on Tuesday that have been shooting people indiscriminately. As I speak now, we are having 70 people that have died. We are also having about we are also having about 20 people that have been amputated, in hospitals, and over 200 that have been admitted in hospital for different, uh, for different, shootings, and also harassments by the police, and about 500 that are currently in jail. So yes, that is what has actually taken us to where we are right now in this context.
Now, this seems like it's been a long road coming in terms of seeing where the protests have got to and where they started. Has the government and the civilians at all had any form of dialogue? Have they sat down and engaged in any talks at all? Or is it just a still ongoing scuffle between civilians and the government, and there's no communication between the two that's taking place at all?
Well, there is no dialogue, that has taken place between, civic society and the government as of now. The pro-democracy movement have all along been calling for a genuine dialogue, to deal with the socio-economic and political situation in the country. But government, has been turning a deaf eye, and when the people they are protesting peacefully, they've unleashed the security forces, and this time around they even unleashed the army that is still roaming, around the streets as we speak now. So there have been no dialogue that have been initiated or that have also taken place between the two entities. However, the SADC fact-finding mission arrived on Sunday here in the country about 2 days ago. They met with government alone, not just to get what is happening. And then they promised that they are coming back tomorrow because they just want to start the process of a dialogue between the two. But for now, they're just talking to the two different groups to try to ascertain their demand and also their story to say how best it can be moved forward.
Thank you ever so much there, Maxwell. You are also mentioning SADC, and I think SADC has been criticized not only recently in Mozambique, but also just generally how they've conducted the way they conduct their fact-finding missions. You look at Zimbabwe, you look at the Democratic Republic of Congo, and as I mentioned earlier on, recently in Mozambique, and now Eswatini, they're getting criticized in that they're not really being firm or helping the civil society in any shape or form. What do you expect from SADC, the Southern African Development Community, and what do you expect from the wider international community? Do you have any expectations as civilians?
Well, our expectation, we don't want to raise our expectation too high on SADC. I think with their history, with what has happened in Zimbabwe, with what they are doing in Mozambique, and as well as AU. In fact, just the SADC and the AU, we don't want to raise our expectations too high on them. Because if they were being proactive, in resolving these socio-economic and political issues in the region, Swaziland will not be where it is today. Because one, Kingdom Swazi has continued, to outlaw political parties. It does not conform with all, the declarations and protocols of SADC, of AU, and also as well as the United Nations. So, but they continue, as if nothing has happened. The SADC protocol on elections and human rights, they're clear how elections should be conducted in the kingdom of in the region. But the king is just doing his own thing. Political parties are banned. He keeps on harassing people. The SADC was not doing anything. So, but now they're even very slow, in terms of addressing the situation that is currently happening in the country. There's still no clear way forward, in clear terms of reference, what is going to be happening in the country. They came here and they left, the army is still roaming the streets, they're shooting the people. Even when they were here, the army was still shooting people, but nothing was said about those issues. So, but of course, as pro-democracy movement, if SADC want to intervene and dialogue with us and help us to dialogue, give them that particular chance. But we don't want to raise our expectations too high, especially their slow pace in terms of addressing these issues, as also their recent history in Mozambique and other parts of SADC that have intervened.
Now, you speak of that you have been through your own experiences personally. You have been to prison whilst you are fighting for democracy within the kingdom. But what sort of balance are you looking for as a pro-democracy activist? What balance are you looking for with the government? What can coexist between having a kingdom and having a civil government? What is your vision, in a way, for Eswatini going forward?
Well, it has been our fundamental belief that the monarchy can coexist, with the modern, democracy or a modern government, where the of powers constitutional framework, the model and also the place of the of Eswatini. So we've always held, that belief that no, we can still have a constitutional multi-party democracy, where the king can coexist, within the multi-party democracy, just like in other countries that is happening. In South Africa, there are so many, monarchy there that are existing with the legal framework of the constitution. In UK, is something that is happening in the United Kingdom and other, countries, all over the world where the monarch exists, with a modern government. And it has been our firm belief that we are going to have some sort of arrangements like that, as young people or as a kingdom of Eswatini. But of course, the people, especially by the king of unleashing, the armed forces on the people, the mood, it will end up turning, into people saying, no, we want, to have this issue of a monarch. We just want a republic. But of calling that maybe we can be able to find each other and see how best the monarchy can coexist with a modern government that is under constitutionalism, multi-party democracy, as well as a civilian government, with a clear rule of law, separation of powers, as well as pluralism. So we believe that we can be able to find each other around those issues.
No problem. I think finally, just before we conclude, I know that there is no internet per se, and you found means to get into contact with us today, and we appreciate that ever so much. Just before we round it up, finally, what are your thoughts on all of this, personally speaking? There have been sort of flash protests before in the kingdom. It makes this very different in comparison to all the other flash protests.
Well, I think the struggle of the people of Eswatini has matured over time, and the anger and the frustration, it has been building up for many years. And I think even the COVID-19 pandemic, it's quite hit hard, on the economy and also on the livelihood of the people. So people, they're in abject poverty, they're unemployed, they don't have scholarship, they don't have a health, system that is functioning. So they were saying like, no, in all these problems, you're having a king, a royal family that is living in a lavish lifestyle, and rubbing it in the face of people. You're buying, over 19 Rolls Royces at the same time, and spending, the small resources of the country, on himself. And people are saying, no, we are tired, of just keeping quiet, of trying to just talk and talk. Let's just do some action right now. So yeah, the socio-economic and political, situation in the country is quite, push people to act now than instead of just keeping quiet in those issues. So that's what makes it a little bit intense. But also the response by the state of clamping down brutal, people no longer just going to, turn the other cheek when you hit the other cheek. So that was the form of retaliation, a form of anger and a form of rebellion, when they go out and loot, and also they destroy the businesses that are happening in the country. But just maybe one thing in conclusion. The king has got quite a lot of investment, in these businesses in the country. So the reason the people that were looting and burning these shops is because they signify, they symbolize, the king, and also his friends that have been in hold of these countries. I'll make an example with the fuel. The trucks that are bringing fuel in the country, they belong to the king. So currently we're having a problem because people that are trying to block these trucks coming to the country and ban them. So all the trucks now, they're hidden in South Africa. So there's no fuel coming in Swaziland right now because the trucks, they're hidden there in South Africa. So people, they were rebelling against the royal monarch as well as the main government because the businesses, the most of them, they belong to the king, his children, and also his friends. So that's why they were burning them. That's why they were looting them, and also as a form of protest, as a form of rebellion, also as a form of saying, no, enough is enough.
Why is the king scared to have dialogue? And why doesn't he want to have dialogue?
Well, we are dealing with a spoiled bride here. He was born here, into these things. He believes that this is a God-given, is a God-given, position, just to lead. He believes he owns us, he owns this country. So he does not see himself, outside of being, a God, with the divine powers, to rule and to lead this country. So when we talk about, issues of democracy, when we talk about issues of, rule of law, he's just surprised because this is like his fiefdom, this is like his country, this is like his family. So he thinks like he's running, a family thing. Yeah. So that's why it's quite difficult, for him, to actually open up into these things. But in the long run, opening up this discussion, it's also insulating. It also assists him, to be sustainable and also to remain, relevant. Because if you keep on oppressing the people, if you keep on marginalizing the people, they will end up, one way or the other, rebelling, against you, like we have seen against Gaddafi in other parts of the countries, in Zimbabwe, So it's better that you try, to reform, according to your own processes. But he does not want that. He wants to be pushed. He wants to fight back. He wants to continue, being an absolute monarchy, oppressing the people, as well as just having an unlimited access, into the resources of the country, in particular into the budget, and spend it anyhow, buying, expensive and luxurious things all over the world.
Brilliant. Maxwell, thank you ever so much for joining us today. I really appreciate this because I know you had to find ways and means around the internet to connect to the episode today. So we really appreciate that. Thank you ever so much, Maxwell.
No, thank you very much, Brian. Keep on, and thank you for the opportunity to highlight the issues of the people of Eswatini. And thank you to the listeners for this opportunity to listen to what the people of Eswatini are saying.
Thank you ever so much. His name is Maxwell. My name is Mtutuzi Brian. This is Indaba, the African debate. It continues to be seen as to whether democracy, or at least some form of talk, will happen between the king and the civilian society in Eswatini. Let's hope that whatever transpires and whatever happens, peace prevails and some form of stability happens.